Good Monday morning, everyone. It's time for your Monday blessing. So here we are in part 2 of the reward of faithfulness. And this week, I just want to begin to talk about the definition of faithfulness, where faithfulness comes from, and our first thing that God rewards the faithful for. First of all, faithfulness, true faithfulness, is the fruit of the Spirit, and it comes from being in relationship with Jesus, who is known as the faithful and true one. In Revelations 19:11, we see that Christ is the faithful and true one. It says, "And I saw heaven opened, and behold, a white horse, and he who was riding it is called Faithful and True, trustworthy, loyal, incorruptible, steady, and in righteousness he judges and wages war on the rebellious nations." So we see here that Jesus he just is the definition of faithful. When you look at that word in the Merriam-Webster, it says faithful is full of faith. And then beside it, it said obsolete. And I was like, what? That is probably the best definition of all. Full of faith. You cannot be faithful to the faithful and true one unless you're full of faith. So number 2 is steadfast in affection or allegiance. Loyal. So when you're faithful, you're not all over the place emotionally. You're just steadfast. You just love continually. Number 3, firm in adherence to promises or in observance of duty, conscientious. Number 4, given with strong assurance. It's binding. So in other words, when you give a promise, you are faithful to it. And then number 5 is true to the facts, to a standard or to an original, like a faithful copy. You're not inauthentic, you're true. Dictionary.com says full of faith, strict or thorough in performance of duty, true to one's word, promises, vows, steady in allegiance or affection, loyal, constant, reliable, trusted, or believed, adhering to a standard or an original. And none of us can live up to that without having the one who does live up to it living on the inside of us, and that is Jesus. And it's a fruit. It's developed through abiding and spending time in his presence. Just as fruit takes time to develop on a tree, this is something in our life that takes time to develop. But if we will stay in the presence of God and nurture our relationship with him, this is a manifestation or a fruit of his virtue that starts to show up in our life, and heaven starts to recognize it, earth begins to recognize it, and we are promoted and we are rewarded for it. Galatians 5:22 says this, "But the fruit of the Spirit, the result of his presence within us, is love, unselfish concern for others, joy, inner peace, patience," not the ability to wait, but how we act while waiting. So in other words, we stay faithful in the waiting. Kindness, goodness, and there it is, that last one, faithfulness. So whenever there's a breach in faithfulness, there's been a breakdown in intimacy with God. So if you're having trouble with that, just go right back to your prayer closet, start spending time with the Lord, reconnect with him, confess any unfaithfulness, and draw from his virtue, and you'll start to see that faithfulness showing up in every area of your life. And what happens is through relationship, we begin to be faithful to our duties, faithful in our marriages, faithful to our word, faithful in our love toward God and others. And this is the kind of life that God not only desires for us, but the kind of life that he blesses. And so that leads me to the first thing in our 11 things that God rewards the faithful for. And number 1 is time in the secret place with God. Just time connecting with him. And as I've stated, you cannot see that faithfulness developed in your life without that. Matthew 6:6 says this. Jesus said, "When you go to pray, go into your most private room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is in secret, and your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you." There it is, will reward you. God's showing me that this is going to be the year of the intercessor's reward. And I really believe it's because of faithfulness. God is rewarding the faithful right now. And I want to encourage you, don't be one of those crisis Christians that only prays when there's a crisis. Be someone who spends time with the Lord continually in prayer. And know this is your year, intercessors, for great reward. I love you all. I bless you. I declare that God is rewarding you because you diligently seek Him. Next week we'll get into part 2. I love you, and I'll see you next week.
It's like you're looking through a telescope. You see where you're gonna be.